University of Rome, and today for this afternoon, as you may know, we are very happy, and also another colleagues from Switzerland, Poland, and also Sweden, and so this afternoon, and of course, with the coming European elections, so I would like to also take this opportunity to know more about what's going on and what kind of impact and effect of the coming European elections, not just only for the European, in particular from the Italian perspective. Of course, as you may know, the importance of the coming European elections, who will also have the impact on all of the world, including Taiwan. So, of course, we would like to also to share with all of you here to have the different opinions and also try to exchange the view. And we hope this afternoon with this small workshop will bring us fruitful idea and thinking. Of course, before the discussion, we are very happy, and also with the support from the Sapienza University of Rome. Now we can establish finally the connection with the Rome directly. This is also for me the first experience with your university. So I think it's very exciting, and of course, and I would like to also say hello with Professor Sacco. Hello. Okay. So. Hello. Of course, you know here why 13 afternoon, because we have different hours between Taipei and Rome. So, and again, thank you for all you here, and of course, we would like to see further cooperation with two universities, of course, with the support of the Ambassador Giglio. And so before the free discussion and also the intervention of Professor Sacco, of course, I would like to firstly invite Your Excellency Ambassador Giglio to have some opening remarks about this issue. Okay, let's give a welcome close to the Ambassador Giglio. Professor Sacco is okay.
I'm okay.
Okay. So now it's the floor is to the Ambassador Giglio.
Hello, very pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Professor. First of all, let me thank you, the EU Center, Professor Tai-lin Chang, particularly for convening this opportunity for a free-flowing exchange of ideas. And I'm happy to see that there are many dimensions of Europe being represented. We have the East, we have Centro South, Italy, possibly South. We have Switzerland, which although it's not part of the EU, is the heart of Europe. We have Sweden with a perspective over from the north. So I think we have all the ingredients for a very broad exchange of ideas. I'm grateful to Sapienza University for being very active in the past few months in making contacts and interaction with the local universities in Taiwan. And I'm very grateful for you for your interest. I know you work for a long time. You've been working for a long time on Europe and from Taiwan, and you have an original perspective that is very useful for us also to get to know. Before we give the floor to Professor Sacco, to whom we extend our greetings, from based in Rome, let me say that it's very timely, the date that we have chosen for this meeting. As you know, voting is already underway in several European countries. I know, for instance, the Swedish roads, for instance, already voted. And of course, the vote will take place on Sunday, but it's a process that concerns 27 countries, and so it's a massive also logistical effort that is being carried out, and it comes to the end of a very intense political season in Europe. Only yesterday, for instance, in Milan, we saw an important meeting which was carried out from the so-called sovereign parties. There have been other important manifestations, for instance, in Germany, in Rome yesterday. So it's a very lively time in Europe, and it's a time where I think probably more than ever we are discussing what is next for Europe. Because I think that over the coming few weeks we will have to take stock of a situation which will be somewhat different from the one we've experienced over the past not only 5 years, but possibly over 10 or even more 20 years. According to the polls, the traditional political families, ideological families of Europe, say the socialist and popular, may suffer a blow. It's not, of course, clear to which extent this blow will be. It may happen, may not happen. Sometimes the polls are not always precise, but there's been a trend which has been rather consistent over the past few months that has indicated that there is a possibility of having a completely different, or a rather different European Parliament than the one we had before. I think it's important, first of all, that the Europeans go to the polls. They go to vote, because in the past the turnout has not been historically very high. I think in the last occasion was about 57%. It's interesting to note about the turnout that it is rather low in the countries that, if you see the statistics, that the countries that benefit more from European Union funds are those that go less to the polls. Whereas when you go to Germany, which is probably the country that gives the most, 1 out of 2 voters go to the polls. And I think this is important, and it will be very interesting to see whether there will be a higher turnout this time, also in the so-called Eurosceptic countries. I think that the appeal to go to the polls was one of the reasons why 21 presidents of the states that compose the European Union have addressed an open letter in the past few weeks, and also the Italian President Sergio Mattarella co-signed this letter. This message was, get out the vote. You know, this is a time where whatever your opinion are about Europe, you have to stand up. You have to stand up and be counted, because your ideas are important, so that we know what will be the way forward. I think another important element of this letter was that there is an appeal to go back to the core values of the European Union. The values of the founding fathers, let's say, of the EU. And as also our president has highlighted, the core message of the founding fathers was to build a Europe that coalesced around a nucleus of values and ideas. So a Europe which is not only based on currency, business, interest rates, but on more profound values. And probably the reason why the low turnout and some sort of disaffection that in Europe has creeped over the years vis-à-vis the European Union is the lack of empathy, the lack of an emotional connection with the structures and the infrastructure that's been built over the years. And this is the biggest danger that the EU is facing and has faced over the past few years. And if the European project has to go forward with fresh momentum, we have to get over this. We have to give a sense of mission to the European project. And I'm really open here for the discussion about what would be this mission. Certainly, the European Union is faced with challenges, and it would be probably easy to find a mission, a future mission based on the challenges that we are facing. But if you look also at what are these challenges, you may get different opinions in Europe on which are the priorities that we have to face. If you ask, if you make a poll among the youth, the young people, you will certainly see that probably climate change is the number one issue. But this is not necessarily the case in different demographic segments of the European society. For instance, there may be demographic segments that are more sensible to the issue of migration, or to the issue of safety, personal safety in societies, or jobs and employment. There can be also other areas of priority. So let's see what will what indications we get from the vote. Just to conclude, I think that the most likely scenario that we're going to face is a very fragmented one, and considering that there will be some necessary political appointments to make in the past, over the next few weeks, it will be difficult for the European Parliament and also to find new equilibrium, a new balance. There will be the President of the European Commission, the European Central Bank, even the Commission Secretary General post, which is typically a bureaucratic appointment, but it has become somewhat politicized. Let's see what kind of alliances can be built. Even though some polls suggest that the wind is blowing in favor of the so-called populist sovereign parties, it is far from certain that they may be able to reach the necessary volume of votes that can give them a decisive influence in the parliament. So I think we are in for a very interesting political season. Very open, very probably lively and heated, but I think it's for the very good of the EU that this debate takes place in the most civilized way, of course, as it's possible. But if the European Union project has to go forward, I think it's the time for taking stock of the success. It's really important. It's a big success in the European Union. But also of the failures that over the past few years, and in the light also of the economic crisis that has affected the EU after 2008, have emerged as a main concern for a lot of European voters. So I thank you again for convening this meeting, and really open on the floor. First of all, I think we should hear from Professor Sacco from Rome, who's been very patient in listening to us.
Okay, so thank you, Professor Giglio. Now the floor is go back to Rome. So I would like to invite Professor Sacco and to have some words after the opening remarks made by the Master Giglio. So Professor Sacco, it's your floor, please. Oh,
let's go back to the issue of turnout. Turnout has always been a problem in European elections all over Europe, because in many countries less than 50% of the population bothered to go to the polls. Italy traditionally has been one of the country where the turnout was the highest. And it will be very high also this time. And the general idea is that it will be higher than usual also in other European countries. Why? Because there is a perception that the European Union is in crisis at this present moment. So the turnout is in part a consequence of this crisis. There are very divided opinions about Europe. So the turnout might be more a sign, a very high turnout, but it might be more a sign of problems than a sign of good health, if I may say so. And indeed, there is a problem, no doubt. Pro-European people will go to vote because they perceive that there is a growing mood against Europe all over the continent, against Europe, against the European Union and the policies, in particular the European Union in these last 20 years, basically, since the creation of the euro, mostly. Of course, this is not the case for Britain. The Brexit is a serious sign of crisis for the European Union, and the way it has been managed with the British going to the polls and electing members, about 70 members of the European Parliament that will be on the way out, is also a sign that the new Parliament will be elected with a kind of permanent wound. It's a would be wounded Parliament. So the negative signs are very visible. I've noticed that in the countries where I've been spending time recently, that's France and Italy, it is quite meaningful that the pro-European parties, the parties who stand for Europe, and denounce the sovereignists, the populists, that are against the sovereignists and populists, are making a campaign saying that it's very important to vote for them because they will change Europe, because the present one doesn't work. So basically, what can I say? That the critical view of the way Europe works is universal. It's shared by the pro-European and so-called sovereignist parties. Basically, what they seem to disagree about is whether the European Union is reformable or not. You see, whether the change and how deep and serious have to be the change. At the level of governments, for instance, initiatives appeared recently. The Germans and all the others are in favor of abolishing this division of the capital of Europe between Brussels and Strasbourg. The fact that the Assembly meets, the European Parliament meets in Strasbourg is seen as a sign of waste and irrationality. Now, of course, the French disagree with that because they perceive as a net economical gain the fact that at every session of the Parliament a crowd of people loaded with documents and offices, entire offices move to Strasbourg. So this minimum reform, which is really a simple fact of bringing some rationality to the organization, is seen as a major divisive element between France and Germany, who are supposed to be the European, especially the French, hit the drum. The French government is saying to everybody who wants to listen, and also to those who don't want to listen, that they are the ones, that Macron is the one who is going to create a new Europe, to give a new breath of life to Europe. And then they end up quarreling on this very minor and cheap, petty issues, very cheap petty issues. So is frankly not very optimistic to make an English understatement. Also, there is a perception of the 43 years of British presence in the European Union as a catastrophic operation. Catastrophic for Europe, because Britain was at the beginning fiercely opposed to the European community, created an alternative. We tried to create an alternative with the European Free Trade Area. When they failed to create any decent alternative to the European of the time, they decided to join in with strong resistance from the French government in the war's time. Then they joined in and pushed very much for the enlargement. The enlargement can be seen as a way of putting water into the European wine. And then, at the last, after having created a substantial number of problems, they slam the door and go, doing more damage to the European Union. So the climate is frankly very worrisome.
Yeah, please. Now it's Professor Stefano Pelaggi. If you want.
Thank you everybody. Thank you Professor Chang. I'm sorry for the problem of connection, but this is an experiment. As the European Union was an experiment, and in the last years, in the last decade, probably we always thought of the EU as we haven't thought of the EU as an experiment anymore. We've been thinking of European Union as something stable with a well-known border, something which was not supposed to move, to shift in any way. So I think that we should go back to the early 90s, to the 80s, to the 70s, where the European Union was just an idea, was something on the move. So we should take the European Union like the experiment we did today with the communication with Italy. Professor Sacco mentioned some opposition, some contrast, the small debate compared to the big one between France and...
Not necessarily having the opportunity to participating effectively in the democratic process there within. I think in Scandinavia more generally, one of the big European issues now, of course, is Brexit, and that's especially acute in Iceland because most of our foreign exports go to Europe, and a big part of that goes to Britain specifically. So the question is, how will Brexit influence Icelandic foreign trade, for example, and also what will be the institutional setup after Brexit? Because there are influential forces in Britain that want Britain now to adopt some kind of similar agreement as the EEA agreement that Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein have with the European Union. But Norway and Iceland are very worried that if Britain is allowed into this agreement, that would completely change the balance of power within that agreement, and that would undermine actually the position of Iceland and Norway within it. So Iceland and Norway, I would say, are watching very closely what is happening in Brexit especially. My other point was perhaps more related to what Professor Carteny spoke about earlier, the more general discussion about what type of issues are debated in European elections. I think it's also a shame that people don't really address the fundamental issues of whether they're in favor of closer federalist integration or what they actually mean by a more sovereignist stand. And I think it also goes to the heart of the nature of the European Union that we often confuse on the one hand criticism of current policies that are being adopted by the European Union with a criticism of the European Union as a political institution as such. And I think, perhaps unlike many people in Europe today, I'm quite optimistic about the coming years, and I'm quite optimistic about Brexit, because I see, as the professor we spoke to, Oscar from Italy, mentioned earlier, that Britain has been in many ways a saboteur within the European project and has undermined efforts to integrate more closely. And I think now that Britain is leaving, yes, it will be painful and difficult to adjust, but in the long term it will lead to a more closely integrated European Union.
The goal would be proud of you.
The goal was right on about
What we can see on screen is probably amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Just
Let's have a
Do you know everyone? Yeah, Dr. Bozzato. Do you know everyone here?
yes,
Okay.
just a few comments about the thing that you raised, Professor. The way the EU looks at Taiwan. As you correctly point out, Taiwan is a democracy and the EU is a club of democracies. So we share principles and values. So we can say in very general terms that Taiwan as a friend in the EU. So this is completely shown by clearly we have the trade that Taiwan has with EU countries. You can just enter Europe with visa-free by holding a public or China passport, which is already a very significant achievement. Then it takes two to tango, in the sense that the attitude that the EU countries may have toward Taiwan in the future will also be determined or influenced, pardon me, by the next political leadership. There are going to be presidential elections in Taiwan in January, and then the EU will have a new interlocutor, or the same one. We don't know yet. There are strong indications, though, that there will be a change of guard. The presidency in Taiwan. Shifting the focus to the China and Russia discourse, political discourse in the EU, I believe it could be misleading and problematic to collate China and Russia together, to put them in the same basket. They are two very different powers with a parallelism of interest, but for a start, Russia is a European country, Asian too, but European country, traditional European country. China is not. Then also defining the EU in terms of China-Russia containment can be somehow dangerous in terms of a EU identity. As my friend Raffaele Cazzola say, if not for economic, just for economic reasons, it's impossible to shut Russia off the EU. Russia is an important economic partner in terms of import of energy commodities for some European countries. So rather the EU should try to engage Russia and do it safely, as we call it from Poland, highlighting. But defining the EU against the outside world, or just as an exclusive club, can be dangerous. We have two friends from two European countries that are not the EU member states. Nonetheless, I think it's out of question that they are Europeans like us. So, keeping the EU narrative a positive one, an inclusive one, an expansive one, is important for the very future of the EU. And let's stop here. Thank you very much.
And if I may just add, we have two representatives of two countries, Iceland and Switzerland, which have both concluded a free trade agreement with China already. So they are ahead of the game, so to say that. So it would be difficult for them to adopt a containment policy. I just want to reply to your question about what would be the next EU Parliament. What would be the attitude of leaders in Taiwan? I think Taiwan may rest reasonably confident that the next EU Parliament would be sympathetic to the Taiwanese cause. As the last one, the current one is as proved by some initiatives which have happened in recent months. The problem that we have with the European Parliament is that it does not have any real power. So whatever policies or positions they take, they have problems in getting traction with those in the EU who have real power, which is first of all the Commission, who has to negotiate the bilateral investment treaty, for instance, the agreement that has been put on hold for a while, and it's the Commission which has the lead in trade matters. And secondly, the Council, which is made by the member states, and where these favorable attitudes that are rather widespread in the European Parliament, national parliaments as well, fail to get transformed and translated into concrete policy attitudes.
But we interpreted until now the weakness of the European Parliament. But to my knowledge, even for the Bozzato mentioned about the Taiwan enjoy free visa into the EU. I think this decision has been adopted by the European Parliament.
Yeah, the power, the general priorities of the Parliament have been developing and growing. But still, one of the problems we have in the European Union is that many of you have raised it, is the democratic deficit. And the democratic deficit is also represented by the fact that the EU MPs have limited power, so to say, compared to other executives in the EU machinery.
If I may add, regarding the attitude towards Taiwan and the attitude, of course, towards China, I think that we shouldn't consider the so-called sovereignist populism bloc as a monolithic bloc, because it's very different. There are a lot of different. First of all, because, of course, being nationalist and sovereignist, they are really looking forward to their own national interest, and the national interest sometimes goes towards Russia, sometimes goes towards China, so there's a huge difference. But still, inside what we call the sovereignist bloc, there are huge differences. We always put it in some kind of framework which collide with the Visegrad group, but this is not the case. For example, going back to the example that most of us know, the Italian case, the current government, which is it's inside somehow the so-called populist and sovereignist framework, as the two parties very different attitude towards China and towards Taiwan. For example, Lega, the member of Lega are the most active member of the friendship group Italy-Taiwan, which is a really important role, not only in Italy, but in all the European countries. We know that with the lack of official relationship, this kind of lobby group, this kind of non-official relationship are really important. On the other side, the deal which has been signed, the MOU, is more than everything the product of the will of the five-star movement of the other party, which has had a very positive attitude towards China. So we have two totally different positions. The Lega has been called the lack of sovereignty after this deal has been signed. It was the party that raised probably the biggest opposition to the deal itself, that at one point it has been somehow silenced because they were sharing the government. But I think that we shouldn't generalize and put in all this sovereignist populism position in the same cage, in the same basket. They're very different, and the attitude towards China and, of course, towards Taiwan will be very, very different.
Also, when the European country, European government deals with China, Taiwan, Taiwan with T, Taiwan problem, it's not the main issue. There are other issues that come to the fore, like cybersecurity, Chinese interference in internal affairs, China owning strategic assets, etc., etc. Taiwan is a second important, but also somehow secondary issue when it comes to interfacing with China and making a deal with the devil, if I can use this expression. It is within the radar, but it's not at center stage.
There is also an issue that Professor Chang has raised. You said that you look at Europe and populism, where it comes from. You're in Taiwan, you're a little bit perplexed. Okay, this is a matter for sociologists to answer. But by and large, I would say that at least in the Italian case, what are the drivers have been of the rise of populism are a few ingredients, let's say, and maybe some of them are present in Taiwan. And this could be also useful for you to, in a comparative approach. One is the anti-establishment feeling. People feel disempowered, disenfranchised. They want to be involved into a meaningful political process, and it does not happen. You feel that you are owned by companies, by political forces, economic forces that you don't control, and you develop a sense of anger, antagonism vis-à-vis the establishment. Of this anti-establishment sentiment, the first victims are political parties. At least this is happened in Italy. And you have the movements, such as the Five Stars, that have captured the anti-party feeling. In France, this is not, it has happened, and they go in the Gilets jaunes, and you have the people don't get the political representation that they're asking for, because the political system does not allow to get them into the parliament, and then they have no alternative other than go into the Champs-Élysées. The third ingredient, I would say, is the disparity in income. You see the gap in Italy. Certainly this is a trend, and maybe also in other European countries. And this is a powerful driver of, again, especially among young people who feel that their future has been stolen, basically. And fourth, and this is probably more a national Italian, is the attitude vis-à-vis migration. Which does not mean that the Italians are necessarily racist, but the feeling is that the welfare is like a cake, a pie, and the slice that each Italian has been allotted is becoming increasingly smaller because there are more people participating in eating the pie. Taiwan does not have this issue until now, because the attitude vis-à-vis immigration is different certainly from the one we have in Italy or in Switzerland or in Poland or in northern countries. But certainly this has contributed to the rise of populism in Italy. It's a national perspective, but maybe some of these elements also apply in Taiwan. When we see the emergence of candidates, possible candidates, they have a special trajectory coming from business or are somewhat eccentric to the traditional political parties, we feel that some element of populism are already at play in Taiwan.
Professor mentioned welfare. Actually, it's something that American observers and commentators struggle to understand and deal with. Europe is the homeland of welfare. It was born in Germany with a strong right figure with Otto von Bismarck, and it started giving pensions to people. So Europe comes from a tradition of strong welfare. And with economic globalization, as Ambassador Giglio said, it's been disparity of income, economic polarization, and now welfare, or defending welfare, has become a primary issue in the European political debate. And some populist forces, so-called populist forces, I still highlight that populism is an umbrella concept, have been able to capitalize politically on the issue of welfare. For instance, in Italy, we had the Movimento 5-Star movement propounding the universal basic income as an electoral issue, and it got rewarded because of that. So please keep in mind that Europe and the US, when it comes to welfare, they come from very different, if not opposite traditions and philosophies.
Anyone would want to aid something around Shanghai?
The view from Shanghai.
No, now there are on the table many issues. I can confirm that for Italian people, European election, they are not so important, also because Italians are not so involved in the Europe issue. But why? For which kind of reason? Now in the school we have no professor that pay attention to Europe. So also the childhood and the young people, they don't feel to be European people, but just Italian people. Then the second about the NOU about one belt, one road. I confirm that now the situation in Italy, we must split the difference between 5-star movement and Lega. Even if personally I don't understand which is the exact meaning of the signature of this memorandum of understanding, because everyone said that Italian company will be involved in the big infrastructure. But in Italy doesn't exist anymore any kind of company that can work as a general contractor, because in Italy we have about 8 general contractors, but 6 or 7 of these general contractors nowadays are in bankruptcy. So then if we think about the involvement of Italian banks in the One Belt, One Road, but now in Italy we have no Italian banks anymore. So, and then about the question, if you ask me back, which is the knowledge about Taiwan in Italy. In Italy, one is not so easy just to get some information about international political and information, because if you buy any kind of newspaper, you can find just one page about international political affair. That now some people know something about China, but anybody knows something about Taiwan. So I think that now is just the time also to the support of Davide Giglio here, just to have more chance to have some information about Taiwan, also because Taiwan maybe that is the right partner also for some small and medium Italian enterprise. So I think that this is a new deal for the future among the relationship between Italy and Taiwan. Personally, I am a little bit, even if I'm really involved about China and China law since 1997, and now I'm a little bit scared about the position of Italy with China and with the signing of this memorandum of understanding about One Belt, One Road. Yes.
Italy also joined the Asian Bank. Asian.
Yes,
How many?
I signed the agreement.
Yes.
This I should cut it. I should let it cut.
But what kind of percentage you have perceived?
How much?
Percentage?
2%. 2%. And until now, as said, actually, we have failed to see yet some concrete beneficial involvement of Italian companies. This has to do, also other countries are complaining about this. It has to do with the nature of the bank, with the nature of the projects that have been financing until now. I think that some of the problems are being addressed by the governance of the bank, so we hope in the future that there will be a fallout, because otherwise maybe many other countries may feel that if the only Chinese companies benefit of this project, they may have no interest in maintaining membership. So maybe it's too soon to say, but yeah, until now we expect a lot more from this instrument.
And also about the position of Huawei in Italy. Huawei in Italy has a very two big headquarters, one in Rome and one in Milan. And the headquarters in Milan is R&D headquarters. And so now we don't know what will happen with Huawei in Italy, because everybody of you know the nature of this kind of company that is a military company. While at the same time now in Italy we have the GDPR just about privacy, and so now we really don't know what will happen in the next month.
The issue with Huawei is,
how about the cooperation, Huawei cooperation with the Swedish and Danish? Given that you had already very close cooperation with Huawei and the northern Sweden. No?
Not that I'm aware of, but it might be the case.
How about the Nokia?
Nokia is a Finnish company.
They have operations in many European countries, in Germany, in Spain, in the UK, I believe also in Nordic countries. Although maybe in Sweden they find a strong concurrent in Ericsson or
Ericsson.
I think most of the infrastructure in Sweden is still Ericsson.
Still Ericsson. But the problem with Huawei is first of all that you need an alternative for 5G, and until now Europe doesn't know where to go. There is no alternative on the table, and this is why the Americans are finding a hard time in getting traction with their appeal to sideline Huawei, because if you don't use their infrastructure, who do you go to? Secondly, Huawei over the years has been very smart in becoming to localize itself. At least we've seen in Italy, they've gone to extreme lengths in portraying themselves as an Italian-Chinese company. They employ a lot of Italian engineers. They've placed their most important microwave research and development center in Milan. So they enjoy a degree of sympathy, I should say. But it's not only the Italian case, because the British entered into an agreement a few years ago with Huawei, and they also tried to address these cyber issues, and they have been relatively successful. So we understand the medical concerns. They're very credible. Also, we have had evidence that at least in 2011 and 2012, an Italian carrier called Vodafone, actually international carrier, admitted that there were some backdoors.
I mean, the Chinese policy regarding the I think EU, European country, worried about a lot of examples. We learned also during the last visit of the Xi Jinping in Croatia, and for the summit of the 16+1, and during the visit, in particular the Croatia, she visited a bridge in construction. In fact, that EU's finance, but the China, take this project. So as that caused a lot of problem. Say like saying that of course the EU's countries were not happy. Because with the EU's finance about and I read the documents, EU finance more about 75% of global construction project, 25 from Asia. But again, the China take all for the construction with their labor forces and also equipment. And more and more, that's a simple case.
in Greece, and I think the port also. And you learn also the case for the French airport, Toulouse. It is the same case. The airport Toulouse, 4 years ago, due to the economic reason, French government tried to privatize the airport by inviting the foreign investor company, and then it was China, the company called China took this project, and also have the right to do business, and with a big success 2 years later. And now, I think just a few months ago, and following this privatization, the China company, which they will take more actions from the process of privatization. But again, the French government observed this issue and critical issue, and so the French government says no, but through coup d'état. The French say coup d'état, and following the report made by the coup d'état, and say no, it would be not good for the continue privatization policy. And so the airport Toulouse administration say no more privatization. And at that time, the China investors are not happy. So they sell all actions that they have to the other, and that caused also the problem of the current administration for the airport, the Toulouse. You know the history. That shows that is the problem with the Chinese businessmen or Chinese. But again, we know all. China, we met also Chinese scholar and friends. Shanghai, he said we are not recognized as a free economy, right? There is not. China is not. I don't know. This issue also is very interesting because 1 or 2 years ago, the European Parliament should adopt a decision for this issue, giving the status for the Chinese economy, but without success. I don't know. I think without vote or but the Parliament, maybe EU didn't not being ready to.
You mean market economic status?
Yeah, market. Yeah. That's not, 1 or 2 twice, I think. So that's also the complaint. From the Monnet Chang, right?
This is interesting because right now, maybe sometimes in Taiwan, I hear that Italy is embracing China.
Yeah.
Yes and no, because until if you remember 3 years ago, when the discussion came up of whether China should be recognized, acknowledged as a market economic status, the country that stood in the way to block this was Italy. Because if it was left to the Commission, it would have been an automatic process. China would have become a market economic status. And also other European countries, particularly from those from the north, I wouldn't go into details, but they were also in favor to grant this status automatically. Italy said no, this would damage in a little way some strategic industries, particularly steel and others. And we put the discussion in Brussels. We got the French on our side, then later the Germans. And China didn't get the economic status, and there's a case-by-case decision based on the sector and not on the country, it depends on the sector. So that was, we would say, not only an Italian success, but a European success, because there have been some studies that prove that this decision would have cost hundreds of thousands of jobs in the European Union. Not only in steel sectors, but also in others. So when they say that Italy now is embracing China, no. Okay, we take decisions based on national interests, such as the other European countries do. So China is really too complex to the earth.
Why the delay? Because I learned that the European Parliament and the EU or Commission has been delayed this vote. Is that the vote or delayed?
It is voted now, and the decision is taken by the Commission, but based on case by case on the industry, and not on the country doesn't get the free clean sheet or a mark. Like China wanted this because also it would prove would be useful also now because Trump is claiming that China is not a free economy. So if they had the label given by the European Union, they would have this argument also to spend. And the fact that we didn't get it is, I think, a minimum.
So with the case of Toulouse, you pointed to a problem when it comes to having infrastructures investment within the EU funded. Sometimes the only bidder or partner or prospective investor is China. Where are the United States? Where is Japan? Etc. Etc. So if there is a infrastructure that needs funding to be rescued financially or to be upgraded, the Chinese are there. Maybe again, it's a situation of investment monopoly or just one-sided offer. Maybe if there was a different policy from our traditional partners, then the situation would be more even.
Okay, so now I think it's time. Should we connect again with Professor Sacco?
Maybe I will send it. I don't know if he's I've been trying to connect with WhatsApp, unfortunately.
Okay, it's okay. So I think
I will give him.
Waiting, you have a lot of work. So
No. Just wanted to ask you, what is the Taiwanese perception about the whole thing?
Of course, we are here. The EU is in terms of economic aspect. The EU is the biggest trade partner with Taiwan. But again, we are very interested by the EU as well as the European elections. But again, EU with Taiwan geographically, is so far. So, and again, I just mentioned here in Taiwan, we are strongly influenced by the American. And then now, actual government conduct also a policy, closer with the United States. And so, here, for the European community, of course, we have a European community in particular associated with professors and research fellows. And we have, of course, we have some project with the support of the European Union, and also EU's presence with trade offices. But again, if you read some mass media here, we talk less and some. We talk less. No, we are. That's why I try to organize the conference to attract more attention out here, and of course through your effort and through your channels and connection. I hope also this kind of organization, seminar workshop can be informed by the other scholars, professors, of the all the European peoples. And so, but here again, we are we all for many years we promote the EU interest here in Taiwan, but sometimes we have also the feeling of the frustration. because we are very minority. Minority.
If I can quote Professor Chang directly, because he told that to me, Professor Carteny, in his words, internationalization does not necessarily mean Americanization.
And also